Joe, what were you saying?
Saying we got to blow this podcast out. It's the big one.
So everyone, Kevin's not here today, and it's our job to prove that you all want to listen to us.
That's right.
And not him.
And not to Kevin. And we're going to spend money in order to make sure that people listen to this, which people, by the way, already do, as he's often fond of saying. How y'all doing? What's going on in your world?
Everything's good here. Pushing products.
Yeah, but talk to me, Joe. You're in your world of product. I know you're sort of getting closer and closer to pushing it out to real people. Now this week we saw some stuff for the first time, right? Or at least I did, and it's like starting to be a little bit kind of real. What is it like, and how do you know you're going in the right direction with something so ephemeral when there's like 5 users? Like how do you know that you and your team are going in the right direction?
Hard to know. Yeah, we've got a test flight. We've got, a few hundred users on there. And, letting it grow organically. Mm-hmm. But the numbers are too small to see real stats. So I'm looking at the data every day, and I'm like, why didn't this person give us notification permission? And
right.
How come that person hasn't been back since last week? Mm-hmm. And I'm harassing them and trying to figure out why. And, and then we're adjusting our product. So it's more feeling than facts right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But the numbers are getting bigger, every day, more users, and, hopefully with that, more confidence. Definitely more questions, but confidence kind of comes with answering them, and more to show into bigger audiences soon, I hope. I mean, we're definitely... We've been working on this a long time. Team is really proud of what we've done, but anxious to get kind of real world reality checked on it. So, it's been fun getting it out there.
So do you like the early stage, or do you like it more in the world, scaling, iterating, playing with growth tactics? What's your favorite, Joe?
I think it's one of those things where whatever stage I'm not in, because I really was excited about like, hey, we're gonna like really hunker down and spend however long it takes to figure out, get this product really right, and obsess about the details. And that was really fun for a couple months, and then it was like, at least I got really in my head about like, are we building the right thing? Will anyone care? What are we doing? And and then but then when you're out there in the field of battle and, dealing with the reality of the world, and you don't have time to go think about things and fix things. There's like fires burning and you're just trying to react. So now I want to be in that stage, but I don't know. How about you guys? Have you had felt like you've had an incubation period like this ever?
This resonates. This language you're using right now resonates with me a lot. I'll say, just from my perspective, when I started this company Practice, I started it with a few people from Breather that I really liked. And we were like, okay, we just want to work together. Like, we have mutual respect. We'll figure something out. Is kind of like our way we did it. And we raised a couple $1 million, and then we were like, okay, like, let's go out into the world in stuff that we were motivated to do. And before we had hit any level of product market fit, first of all, there's so few people. There's like 4 people in my case. And we're all doing, it's a certain amount of work, but like it's bringing on users. It's like building really fundamental things in almost like a really slow way in an absolute sense. And so actually, just like you didn't describe an existential crisis, but I a little bit am describing one where I was like, oh my God, like, why did I start another company? What the fuck? I don't even know what the hell I was doing. It's in this struggle of last time when I did something and it worked, was I lucky or was I smart? And now I'm on the other side and I'm like, oh, okay, so there's a combination of, yes, you're lucky and you did right, but also you know how to be a CEO, you know how to build a product, you know how to hire good people, all these things. And so I hated that phase. And Andy and I have spoken about this offline, how we didn't really need in the same way to build products from zero at our last company, him at Nanit, me at Breather. I had instant product market fit at Breather, and I never needed to build software and find out where the fucking notification button went. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I have talked to the beauty of Nanit was we're building a baby monitor. Yes, we added a lot of really cool stuff. We track breathing, sleep, and movement. We've built an incredible brand. But at the end of the day, it's not like we're building some new device. People rely on video-based baby monitors for their children. And so we had a long build at Nanit, almost 2 years from inception to shipping for the product rolling off the manufacturing line. And I find I find it very hard to stay sane during that building phase, i.e., am I building? Am I getting signal? Is the product in users' hands? I find that to be the hardest part of any company. But again, as Julian and I were talking about, I didn't have to worry about where the cancel button was or so much interesting stuff when you find product market fit purely in software. Because at the end of the day, we had a product that provided utility that found its product market fit. Yes, we had to tweak a lot of stuff over the long term to build it to what the product is today, but you found it from day one. And so shipping was the unlock for me. The 2 years of building was incredibly difficult, and hardware has much longer cycles than software. So the phase you're going through, Joe, I think basically drives me crazy. But I've heard from a lot of other entrepreneurs that they love it. So that's why I always like to ask this question.
It's a great question, Andy. And I'm going to say I think everybody likes success. It's kind of a silly thing to say. But what I will say is I am effective at scale. I did code when I was a kid. It was a thing that I started doing, and that I think when presented with a certain limited technical problem, I could probably still solve it today after some struggle. But like today, I'm the bard of the Dungeons and Dragons party. I have no particular set of skills myself, but I can do a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here. But that also means that I can't be doing it all on my own and succeeding. Like I could never, Joe, the way you build Klout on your own as the first engineer, I could never do that. So I struggle with the smaller the team. I think the more I struggle. The bigger the team, the more effective of a CEO that I become. That's just my personal experience.
Yeah, it'll be fun getting back to scale. Like, I remember moments at Klout where things that would take months would take days. And you would see the teams, executing, and we hit a really amazing cadence and just kind of level of getting shit done that will be fun to revisit as we scale this company. Because right now, it feels slow because there's just a few of us, and we've been grinding for a while now. But as we get confidence, and that kind of opens the door for more hiring, and that kind of leads to more velocity.
That's up.
With of course tax on that too. But
this is actually a question that we were having on the WhatsApp a little bit this week. Was this discussion of what is essential, especially now? Like you remember, like you thinking like you had a lot of money when you raised your last round, and you're like, we're good. Like I'll get the 500K ARR, then I'll raise 100 million. Which is what you did in 2021, 2022. Now, the conversation is a little bit like, what is essential? Like, for example, because Matt Mokary, who's a famous kind of CEO coach in Silicon Valley, believes that a chief of staff is essential. And because there was another reference. Oh yeah, Joe Laluz, actually, who hasn't been on this podcast, but who is an amazing operator and was a kind of PM-ish dude at Etsy, and then started Bison Trails and then sold it for a lot of money. He said to me, "Oh yeah, I operated almost exclusively through a chief of staff. I found myself doing the same thing, and then as soon as things became more difficult, I immediately was like, wait." This is kind of like vestigial and not essential. And so here's the reason that I'm bringing this up is I want to know, as with your experience running 3 companies, going from like the 5 or whatever your size is today, what are the truly essential things as stuff starts to work? Like, when do you hire a PM? When do you hire your first marketer? Like, how do you think through those problems?
I tend, at this point, it wasn't always like this, but at this point, tend to hire senior people and, that are still doers, though. That's key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But as senior of a doer I can find, even if it costs more.
Okay.
And with the goal of keeping the team as small as possible from a just like total headcount perspective, as long as possible. There are definitely ways I've seen that backfire. Like, you kind of get old nation syndrome in a company where you don't have the kind of young energy, and that has bit me before. But having people who like don't need babysat and are kind of intrinsically motivated and just can do their thing without like a lot of structure has let me keep the team leaner. Without things like a chief of staff or lower number of product managers or whatever that might be. The one big caveat I'll say, I'm a big proponent of hiring senior, like legit HR people early.
Okay. Oh, how early? Tell me about this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's your chief of staff.
Yeah, maybe it is. I mean, I feel like a lot of people I know will wait on that, and they'll have somebody who's like office admin / HR or something. Yeah. And I really like to have like a awesome HR person early. I've been both Klout and Joymode. I had incredible HR people. And those people, I don't know about you guys, but the people part of this is the hardest.
Yeah. Okay, wait. Are you trying to say that you're socially incapable? I don't think that's what you're trying to say, right?
No, I mean, I am socially incapable, but also, it is challenging kind of making sure everyone is growing in the ways they want to grow and that the company needs them to grow, and the dynamics across the team and the culture you're trying to institute and all these things. And having a great HR person, to me, is like a superpower of being able to see in the future, like their ability to kind of smell smoke and see where there's problems brewing before they become actual problems and help me address them. Like that's when I think I tend to hire early compared to other people I know.
I read
Joe,
it recently.
when you say early, when you say early, what is early?
That's what I want to know. I was going to say, Mark Andreessen has a standard for this. I just read the interview. So first of all, I'll ask you, what do you think Mark Andreessen thinks about hiring an HR person? When do you think he thinks that is? And then you tell me what your standard is and why it's better.
So I have no idea what Mark's is. I have no clue. I do not even try to get in that dude's head.
Sure.
For me, basically Series A. Like as soon as it was like the first hire at Series A, kind of for both companies.
That is early.
Call it like and 15 to 20 people. Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. So 15 to 20 people. One of the very first hires post Series A.
Post Series A. So to me, Series A last time was 10 people. You're saying you're 11th person? So Mark,
maybe like 15th, about, between 15 and 20, I would try to add that person.
So Mark Andreessen believes it's 20 to 25.
Okay.
It's as soon as there are layers of management. And why that's standard, he has his own reason. It's actually from the High Growth Handbook, which you could, what pisses me off about that book actually is the fact that it has nothing to do with growing a business. It's like, if your business is growing, then here's the stuff you need to know. It'd be like, son of a bitch, I don't care about that. I care about growing the business. Why did you name this book then? And so Mark Andreessen talks about it and says that by 25, if you don't do it by 25, like things are going to go haywire. I found with my experience, I will say that I became particularly dedicated to HR, having gone all the way up to 250, seen the effects of, I don't want to say Breather had bad culture, but the effects of tiny things at 10 people and the consequences of that at 200, when the same flaw at 10 existed at 200, and what made that occur. I'll give you an example. Like for me, I used to almost like really encourage dissent because I don't want just to have yes men around me. But the result of that was like in some corners of my company, like a really negative set of people. And now looking back at it, people like that are kind of poison and you need to get rid of them as soon as possible. But I didn't know those things, right? And so I became like obsessed with HR related things. It sounds like you try to keep it, well, sounds like you prefer to focus on something else.
I think having a great HR person is the same as focusing on HR. Like it lets, it does enable me to like stay in, whether it's product or growth or hiring or whatever thing is I'm spending time on. But I really do partner with that person. And in both Joymode and Klout, our head of HR was like probably the person I spent the most time with.
Yeah. Talk about why that is.
First, definitely top 3, just because the people are everything. And it is the challenging thing. And, and I got both cases really smart people that, were real problem solvers and cared deeply about the culture and what we were trying to accomplish, and looking at the kind of where there were skill gaps and where we needed to grow and thinking about addressing that. And sometimes it was training, sometimes it was, restructuring, and other times it was hiring or firing.
It's making me think about how much I thought it was a checkbox last time and how much that was a mistake. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because, Joe, you call it HR, and I think a lot of companies now call it people.
Right.
And I think there
people
is...
and culture.
Yeah, exactly. I know. You're describing people and culture.
Yeah.
And where Julian goes on it, when I thought it was a checkbox, that's the HR mentality.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what you're describing. I think it was just it's the word you used.
Yeah.
But people and culture is very interesting. Having a great people and culture influences retention, influences hiring, influences, it hopefully helps solve problems before they bubble up. And I think really just helps an organization. I can't say I've ever, I haven't done it. I haven't had a chief people officer or a head of people. I'm probably late on that hire. I also think now there's some version of this that's almost a head of remote. And head of remote is this same person, probably for Julian and I, less so for you, Joe, because I think you're co-located. But when you're remote, having this type of function in person is even more important. I probably, to my own detriment, keep it lean outside of product design and engineering. I think the first hire that I think is probably I like to hire senior product people, a senior product person to work with me. I like to hire a great designer, somebody who can ship fast and iterate. I think that's that's where I over-index always on a designer, because it's so much easier to build a prototype than to build the product, and to see how it feels and functions. I kind of never hire the chief of staff or the ops people very early. That's probably to my detriment. I'll just take it on and deal with it myself. I find the chief of staff role to be very curious. I think any company under 150 people that hires a chief of staff, I sort of wonder what that person is really doing. I've seen chief of staff with like 6 years of sales background, and they have a chief of staff title, but they're actually probably just selling, and I think that's probably okay. But for so many of these companies, it's like you have all this bloat and you have no product market fit, and that just doesn't fit with our wartime CEO mantra. That was a zero interest rate phenomenon. And I'm not saying what Joe's suggestion at 20 people or 15 people to have an HR, have a people person is wrong. I actually think that's probably actually correct. It's just It's like when the company has RevOps, chief of staff, and so many different ops functions at 25 to 30 people. It's like, who does work here?
I know. I totally agree. Yeah. It also it creates a sort of. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Is chief remote a real title? Are people hiring that? I've never heard that.
It's a head of people, dude.
It's a head of people.
It's a head of people with a different name because there's different problems, I think. Andy, I will say, since you're in New York, by the way, next week I want it known that I will be the only person that has met all of you in person because I will be in Los Angeles and I will have met Joe. Well, I already have met Joe, but I will have met Joe during the podcast. I'm the head of remote. It's me. In New York at the time, Andy, it was very clear that that the best heads of people were in San Francisco. The people that truly were heads of people and not just rando HR people. And that might even be true today. I'm not really sure with like Datadog and other kind of A-class New York type businesses. But at the time, to get a really good head of product, you needed to go to SF. To get a really good head of people, capital P, not an HR lead, you would have to go to San Francisco. And so actually we were handicapped in a way that I'm not today. Today, my head of product is in fact in SF adjacent and is a class, not just for that reason, but partially for that reason, because they sat around other great product people. And so the movements in a lot of cases for very good tech talent in a number of, and I'm going to make a case in a moment, that for different departments, it's in different places. So for heads of product, it's clearly San Francisco. For head of engineering, it's San Francisco, or it might be Seattle, because there's Amazon and other places like that. For marketing, I'm actually going to make the case that it's New York. And you're going to find better marketing people that will be able to spin all kinds of stupid shit despite how bad the company might be. They'll still be able to spin it into something amazing if they're from New York. And so I think that, I don't know where the head of remote comes from, but like that's kind of like how you index on that. I can see you nodding over here, Andy.
Yeah, I really agree with you. If you went back 4 or 5 years, I think I would fully agree with everything you just said. For what it's worth, my head of product also is at San Francisco.
Yeah. My
head of engineering is also in San Francisco. I think now it is easier to find this type of talent in New York just because there's been a migration. People want to live here, and there's been enough big exits, and those people who worked at those amazing companies have started to move here because they want to actually live here, and there are more jobs here. I think design is San Francisco or New York. I think New York has very good design talent typically. San Francisco has more product design talent just because that's a discipline on the West Coast. And honestly, product design as a discipline itself is probably only 7 years old at this point. But I agree with everything you just said. I think remote and this new world that we live in where we can hire distributed or even hire hybrid really opens you up to having some of the best talent everywhere. But I still go back to the wartime CEO comment, and I wonder what the chief of staff does at so many of these companies.
Yeah, because keep in mind, I have this unique, or not quite unique, but unusual combination of functions, which is I operate as a part-time executive coach for CEOs, and I also am a CEO at the same time. I am fortunate that the one person I advised to get a chief of staff at that time when I had one, it was actually going through a scaling company and has now raised over $50 million, and it was the right decision, right? But in early stage companies, my view has kind of returned to this has got to be as skeletal as it possibly can. And I'm always thinking, what is essential, right? And so, Joe, it sounds, and by the way, Joe, I want to dig into the whole thing. Probably, if you're running a consumer company, Los Angeles is where you're going to get better people. If you're in San Francisco, probably that's where, if you're running an enterprise sales company, that's probably where you get your enterprise salesperson. Do these things resonate with you?
Yeah, I feel like LA right now for consumers is pretty special, and we've got some really great companies, and obviously gaming is also really big here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I do not feel disadvantaged in any way looking at talent in LA for what we're building on a consumer product.
Mm-hmm. So what is the next essential hire after your head of HR?
I mean, we're still kind of the bus factor of like any one person gets hit by the bus, like the whole system stops. So like, we're trying to add increased capacity, like go from one designer to two designers, scale up, one back-end engineer to two back-end engineers. So like we've got some just basic foundational stuff to grow into before we start thinking about like product managers and even probably a community person for a company like us would be a big,
that's true,
not an expensive hire, but a super high impact.
Yeah.
That would.
Are there any marketing people in your business?
No, so that would be kind of like the start of that, because I think marketing for us is community building.
Well, especially with a zero cost of acquisition and a $0 LTV.
Yeah.
Right.
The one thing I think that's gotten so much easier is like the ops finance workflow that used to be 10 years ago so hard, and now you can basically pay an outsourced firm, I don't know, like $2,000 to set up your HR system into QuickBooks, into Expensify, into Ramp, into Bill.com. And then like you never have to worry again about where you're spending money, where the money's going, and then hire an outsourced bookkeeper. That is like a massive shift from 10 years ago. Now it's, if you just set it up correctly, there is like a standard stack. You don't have to do anything, and you can hire somebody for $1,000 a month to do your books. And that scales probably until you're like $1 million in revenue, if not more. And so that's one of the things that like that ops finance function has really gone away with software, at least at the early stage. And now I've heard the opposite side of things. If you screw this up, it's a total disaster. Thankfully, I think I've been lucky, and I've just implemented it correctly from day one, and I never think about it.
What is that essential stack? Talk about it precisely. So, what does it look like?
So for me, the essential stack is some kind of bookkeeper. So that's like, I don't know, $1,000 a month to actually do the books. From a software stack perspective, it's Ramp or Expensify or Brex on the credit card side of it. So credit cards or expense management and just making sure everything is digital. QuickBooks as the back end. We use Bill.com for any time we have to pay an invoice. And then something like, if you're running a startup, just hire a PEO, because you can give your employees much better benefits, and then you don't have to worry about state labor laws. So JustWorks, Rippling, TriNet, or I think you're using Deal now, their US PEO product.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, after you have like you pay somebody to set this up, or you're done, and everything's on autopilot, and it's like software.
And Deal is now even doing visa processes, which is unbelievable, right? Yeah. Because now it's like, if you really want to hire them, I'm not sure what a visa would even do if you're an employer of if they're your employer of record. That's how the process works, by the way, for anyone listening here. It's like if Deal becomes, or remote.com becomes your employer of record if you're hiring someone, for example, like we have someone in Serbia, right? But now they're also giving people the ability to have a visa process done through Deal, which, by the way, is at 300 million ARR at the moment. Wow. That's how wild that company it is. As one of the few companies started by a Frenchman, if I remember correctly, that has gone anywhere. And Israeli?
Yeah. And we got to get Alex on this podcast. I know I think he is a second-time founder, and I'd love to hear his story, because that company, we're all customers. So Alex, if you're out there, or anyone who knows Alex, we want to get you on the show.
We'll just speak French into, or What you would say Yiddish?
Maybe he's a French Israeli.
Maybe he's French Israeli. That would be an amazing combination. So it's just amazing how that whole stack has become more and more unified, and you can focus. Well, what it really presents is this problem of, okay, just grow the business, and all the other externalities of like pay the right person and get the bookkeeping done and all these other things, like it puts them all to the side and keeps you at like facing the core problem, which kind of returning to your whole thing, Joe, like when you're facing the 0 to 1 problem and you're like, this is not going anywhere, that process to me was really tough. And it actually, there was a phase where it led to me not sleeping. And if I don't sleep, that's where I start to not function properly. And
Same.
that's where I learned my hack of reading detective novels at night to make sure that I go to sleep, which I still keep doing to this day. If I wake up in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, detective novel, I just pull it out on my Kindle, and it makes sure that I can go to sleep. So I don't want to jinx it. I feel weird talking about it here, but like it's caused it's a weird kind of life hack that has really helped me out. When I'm beyond 0 to 1, right? Like today, practice has hundreds, but not yet thousands of customers. Now I'm like, the problems get more tactical and get less existential.
Yeah.
And that I find much more comforting.
Yeah, because I mean, day to day, it feels like we're building something really important. And it feels like we have thought through this in really, intense ways, but like, you get into your own head, or I get in my own head of like, what if this doesn't, nobody cares, and how are we gonna know? And it's hard to keep the team motivated on keep going faster. Come on, we gotta push. When they're like, no one's seeing this shit. Or at least when you're out and they're seeing the bug tickets come in and they feel the pain. Yeah, it's not just you like saying go faster to go faster.
I will say that having accidentally ridden a wave of insane market size last time, Andy, I don't know if this resonates with you, but for me, like, one of the reasons that it was successful is this gigantic market size real estate wave, right? Like and plus the fact that I was in the thick of it with WeWork, right? Like the fact that everyone was looking at commercial real estate and saying something is happening here just drove it, not headwinds, but tailwinds that allowed the company to be easier. And never again will I run a business where the market size is like not clear. Like today, even though we started as a kind of coach focused product, we've now expanded to 5 or 6 other verticals, right? Like we have tutors and virtual assistants and other kinds of solopreneurs that use the product. And that's by design, going after a very, very, very large market where there's hundreds of customers every day looking for a solution, or thousands. And I would be, I don't know, doing a 0 to 1 thing where I'm not clear about the market size. I guess you have to figure out what your strengths are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like I've never known market size for anything I've built.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's the exact opposite of the way I think about things. I go market size, almost like market size and my interest, and then I'm like, how do I build a business around those two things?
Yeah.
Well, Joe, your market size is sort of like Vowel's market size, and that it is kind of almost unlimited to some degree.
Like, do you want a job?
You and I are everyone who works. Yeah, exactly. Do you work? Are you a knowledge worker? I think is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And so it's like something like 1 billion people globally. I can't define it. It's very hard to define it further.
Yeah, but it's hard to make an argument that it's not huge.
Yeah, exactly. That's very interesting, your perspective on large markets, Julian. I think large markets are very...
I learned it from a VC, to tell you the truth. I had close relationships with enough VCs over a series of rounds that they would show me the decks that they presented to LPs, right? And so Andy, I know in Norwest you probably saw this and it's not a big deal to you, but I think for most entrepreneurs it probably is. They're like, how does the venture capitalist present to their limited partner that will invest like $50 million or whatever? And so seeing how they looked at it made me realize, outside of my own obsession with myself and how briefly in my 20s I thought I was a genius before I hit the real world, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a fucking idiot. Like in that era where I was confronting the real world, it's really challenging to run a startup and be like, oh my God, nobody gives a shit. What am I going to do? So I was like, okay, well, what's going to turn in my favor? And what you realize is just like, there are why now. It's why every deck has a why now slide. And why that why now slide is so important. And Andy, I know like at the moment, because you and I were talking offline about how your product features that you're shipping, I think are A+, A++ Vowel at the moment. And that's because yes, this is kind of AI thing that's going on. It's like Zoom, so infinite market size, plus AI, infinite market size, are hitting up against one another, and you're finding the most practical ways to ship iterative features. And so I commended you offline for that. I'll commend you for it here. Like, I think it's super. And so you're in a wave, but you just kind of did it by accident. Maybe talk a bit about that?
It's not by accident. So I'm going to tell you something. So Nanit is an AI company. We don't really talk about it. We talk about it as a product company. If you go to our website, we never talk about the AI features and functionality. It's just, that's been core marketing 101 for us from day one. And in 2019, when we were playing around and starting Vowel, one of the big things we started to think about is what is going to be the evolution of NLP. And in 2019, NLP was very difficult to use. This is the beginning of transformer models. This is really, we just hadn't seen the type of gains we saw in deep learning on computer vision and in other machine learning, call it categories, in language. And so we built a product focused on user pain first. And about a year and a quarter ago, we started to see these GPT models being pushed out. And we started to realize everything from day one, our vision, was possible. And so now we're in a wave. And we're just trying to ship as fast as possible while keeping our quality up. And it seems like, to me, every day there are new models being announced. There are new strategies to use models. Mm-hmm. There are, I think Sam Altman yesterday said they don't think there's going to be any more gains from model size and from model size. And so our goal is to just take these type of deep technical underpinnings and deliver the user a Joe-type consumer experience. Something that feels like magic, something that you don't think about it's AI, it just works. Yeah. And it's been very interesting because I think since we've started really pushing out some of our AI features, everyone under the sun now has to have an AI strategy, especially anybody who's filling out any legacy software business has to start thinking about, how do I add AI on top of my core software experience within reason, so that we don't lose to the newer incumbent who's going to reinvent our productivity stack or reinvent our digitized form, because so much of software is a digitized.
Andy, what are you hearing from the companies using your product on how like leveraging AI through a third-party product is changing their internal workflows? Like, I think we're all thinking a lot about the next few years of work and how AI doesn't just impact our products, but like impacts the way we all work together. And what that, we were talking earlier about hiring. Are we hiring as many people? And do the way we do meetings change? And, all these
big
different
question.
things.
So I think the biggest thing that we've heard recently is from a company, the CEO of a company called Homeroom, and I think the quote's now on our website. And he said they save 6 hours per week per employee of admin time by using Vowel. Why is that? Well, they no longer feel the need to have the entire team in a meeting. And I think Shopify has talked a lot about this direction in itself, that all of a sudden, pre-pandemic, 3 people would be in a meeting, and now 20 people are on the invite. So what folks are doing, what we're hearing from our customers is they describe Vowel as time travel. They're getting to this place where they'll quickly read the summary. They'll be able to audit the summary, click on a moment, and listen to a stand-up, a customer call, a product or a design crit or product review.
Yeah.
And so we're hearing that it's so big. And then the one thing that I find so interesting that people really love that we rolled out publicly yesterday is now when you join a meeting 5 minutes late, we instantly pop up a window and tell you what happened in the past 5 or 10 minutes. And so we're trying to give you instant, in the moment insights into what's going on. And I think our vision to where this goes is really long and detailed. But what we're trying to do now is give you an assistant that has access to everything bi-directionally, whether it's what's going on in Jira or what's going on in asynchronous communication. Because in that model, instead of going to Slack and asking the product manager what's going on with a project, you can actually go to Vowel and ask what's going on with the project, and you'd have access to what Jira or Linear says, access to what's been going on daily stand-ups, and maybe access to a meeting between product and engineering. And so it kind of solves that initial core workflow that we thought we'd get from Slack, but we've never actually gotten it. It's just replaced email, and we get stuck in threads.
I'm just like, to tell you the truth, Andy, Joe, I'm sort of listening to him. I'm like, is he the smartest among us? That is fucked up. I did not think that. It genuinely, you're very good at talking about it at minimum, and it makes me think of is how do I take human hours, things that would normally be a low leverage kind of human work, and effectively how do I turn them into zero cost hours and act as if they're infinite, the same way you used to think of compute as being expensive, and then you start to think of compute as costing zero.
Yeah. I think we're going to blend very quickly asynchronous and synchronous information. And what that's going to do is allow you to a much deeper picture of what's going on in your company. And our companies are pretty small, but you can start to imagine what it's like at a Procter & Gamble, or what it's like at even a 300-person company. You're going to have a dashboard where you can ask questions, and you'll very quickly be able to get the answer. And that function used to happen either on chat, i.e. Slack or Teams, or would happen on calls, or by emailing people. And you'll be able to get all that just from a Q&A interface. And my goal is for that to be Vowel. So that's what I'm building. And I find this year has just been so fascinating and moving so fast.
Yeah.
It's the fastest I've ever seen any market move.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nuts. Just, I'm curious, you deal with a lot of solopreneurs, like your whole business. Do you feel like they are, because these are people using your product, so they are tech forward, but they maybe don't live in tech the way we do. Do you feel like they're tuned into AI and what's coming?
I was noticing something recently as I was writing in some customer notes in a part of our product, just to give people a sense. Like, we try to kind of take all the disparate workflows of solopreneurs and kind of put them in one product, and there ends up being cheaper. It ends up being easier to like create automations and all these things. So it's almost like all these products plus Zapier, but without the Zapier a little bit all at once. And so as I was writing these customer notes, I was like, wow, this is really wordy, is what I thought. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I wonder if I could just have like a little snippet be created with AI here that would say to me, what happened to your last call? And it would be an instant ability to see what happened 2 weeks ago with one client and be able to say, okay, I can instantly prep for this call. And instead of taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes reading through customer notes, it would take me 5 seconds. And so, but I will say this, like, it is hard to distinguish whether that's for me as a product person trying to build with a limited team. It's difficult for me to distinguish whether that is core product or whether that's a gimmick. Like, I can make the case that almost for sure that if I have this, I can build it, and then that'll get me to number one on product hunt, i.e., AI hunt, right? But is that really core product relative to all the other shit that I should be building? That's what I struggle with, and that's actually what I was pointing out about Andy's feature set recently. Is he seems to, every time he's got a product launch, and I consider myself to be a pretty good marketing person, but like every single time he's got a little product launch or a feature, I'm like, that's fucking amazing. And I find myself, it's difficult for me to distinguish what a quality AI quote unquote feature is or product instead of a gimmicky thing that is like a flash in the pan.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely in a novelty phase. But, you know, we've talked about this before. So many of these things are how quick you can develop these things. Like, you know, we had a one-day hackathon and like 4 different products came out because the APIs are so easy. That the cost from a development standpoint for some of these things to get the novelty benefit of being in the moment of AI and giving people something to play with, a lot of times feels worth it right now. But I think your overall point of like, you know, checking it against your real product roadmap is critical.
I will also say that I've got a temperament of this is cool, so I don't want to do it. Like, I just have that shitty attitude. It's not a good attitude, to tell you the truth. Like, when I see good features in a competitor, this has been true throughout a lot of my career, honestly, is when I see features in a competitor, I'm like, oh, that's good. I'm like, fuck them. I don't want to do it. I want to do it a different way. When really should be doing is I should be Facebook. And I should be like, we're going to copy it and then act like it's our idea.
Yeah.
My view on this stuff is it has to be a 10x better experience and almost 10x productivity hack for it to really be value versus fluff in kind of the AI space. And I think we've seen a lot of fluff on Twitter. We've also seen some real value. And I think it just depends on the workflow. Like Intercom rolling out their AI feature set for ticketing, i.e. your support. That's really valuable because now all of a sudden you can just have it change the tone. You can have it clean it up. And it really saves a lot of time. And if you think about customer support, typically it's a cost center and typically you're worried about how fast they can resolve the tickets. I don't know if the feature that you described is fluff or is something that it would give somebody a 10x productivity lift. And I think that's one of the tough things. I do have a very hypothesis on the world that AI in general is going to reinvent the collaboration stack. It's going to kill a lot of old school industries. And I think in general there's going to be an incredible amount of applications built that are really going to displace knowledge workers across a lot of variety of industries outside of core technology. And I think it's just a very interesting time in the space in general. I think everyone is sitting there thinking, what do I have to do now? I'm sure every public company CEO is thinking.
Yes, every private company CEO.
And the interesting part about it is until November or whenever ChatGPT launched, nobody in the world knew anything about AI outside of folks in the tech community. And now there is this expectation from your mom or my mom that AI works. And the expectation for the last 20 years was AI doesn't work. And we had all moved away from even using the word AI and moved towards machine learning and probably burying it under marketing copy.
How are y'all thinking about the number of engineers you have? This is a critical question for me. I'm not changing the number of engineers I have by a great deal right now, but like how do you think about the productivity of an engineer relative to before when you have something that can write code for you.
Yeah, feels too early to tell, but and I don't imagine us reducing the number of engineers we have. Like, we wouldn't eliminate anyone, but I could definitely see it slowing the rate of hiring. Where, maybe if it was like, to put this in consumer terms, like, oh, every 500,000 users, we're going to add another engineer. I'm making numbers up. We might be able to get like 1 million users per engineer because each engineer is able to produce more. So even as the company scales, we just need fewer engineers. Like, it's hard to imagine. I don't know. It's hard to say what, but I would bet money on having fewer engineers than at scale than we would have 5 years ago. 3 years
I think
ago,
that's
1 year
exactly
ago.
right.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Are you all using either the ChatGPT the ChatGPT Plus version, Joe, or Copilot, GitHub's Copilot in your org?
Yeah, we use Copilot, and then we are using OpenAI for a bunch of little product things.
Yeah,
that are
We're
awesome.
using it to as a core use for a marketing project at the moment, and I can't see that going away.
Yeah,
If I'm thinking about it right, but it's also too early to say whether or not. I'll say there's this other thing that's happening, which is the very obvious thing from the perspective of marketing people. I think I've shared before. Probably organic search is probably our number 2 channel today at practice, and we deliberately have been leaning into it for over a year. I have a long experience in SEO from before I ran companies, like venture-backed companies. And what's not clear right now, it is obvious that people are using AI to sort of assist in the writing of pages. And the result of that is sort of a cheaper, high-quality page than prior. To give a sense of context, like a previous blog post that would be indexed by Google would cost in just straight up like about $1 per word, or 40 cents or 50 cents per word. It would cost you about $700 to write one very, very high quality specialized article in dollars today. Now, the question is how automated can that become and still be considered a high quality page by Google? Right?
Yeah, that's the question that I'm thinking about a lot these days. So I think everyone is doing what you're describing. They're using Jasper, they're using Copy AI, or they're just using the GPT-4 version of ChatGPT Plus. So then the question comes, how long until Google has reverse engineered this and marked all AI-generated copy pages
as low-quality pages? Yes.
Yeah. This has to be a 1-year phenomenon.
I completely agree. And we were having an active conversation about this yesterday and saying, well, what is the inverse of a page that is AI-generated? Well, AI has a tendency to, for example, write bullet points, right? And so that's like one signal. It obviously is not producing links to other pages. So anything that produces links to other pages will probably have a tendency to be human. It doesn't produce images in the same way. And so probably anything that produces images, like we're increasing the likelihood that this is a high quality page in addition to the actual like text. But you have to presume that Google will figure out what an AI page looks like, and probably maybe has or has not figured out what exactly it wants to do with it. And but certainly we know that today indications of quality lean in the direction of humans thinking that other humans having written the page makes it more highly likely that they want to read it, right? But of course, this completely turns itself upside down because like the quality of the ChatGPT 3 or 4 or whatever responses are good. That's the part that's really challenging about this. So everyone's experimenting. Me and I think a lot of other people just wish that we knew where to point our efforts, because we still have a limited certain number of engineers. It's like, what is a project today that's now worth it versus before, et cetera?
Yeah, no, what I'm waiting for, and I think this will be peak AI, I'm waiting for the first time we have like a musician who's actually fully AI to climb the charts on Spotify, and for us not to even know. Because somebody has built up a persona that's fully AI driven with imagery, with video, and the songs are good. And so people have, I think there are just so many interesting implications on the creator economy, on creative in general, on all of us building software, productivity, knowledge work.
Yeah.
I think it's like the internet, and I'm fascinated to see what everyone built.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, Andy was talking about how do you know if an artist isn't a real artist and not AI? How do we know people we hire are real people and using real skills and not AI? And does it even matter?
Right.
It's going to be some wild shit for sure.
We're going to need some very serious deepfake detectors, guys.
That is a great way to end it, I think. And this was by far the best episode of this podcast. And I think the numbers will prove that out. Andy, great to see you. Joe, great to see you. See you next week in LA. And everyone else, thanks for listening. And remember, subscribe on all your channels and all those other things. Thanks
Shout out to Kevin. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah. Shout out to Kevin. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, we keep it real and we bring you the facts. It's the Second Time Founders podcast. Talking tech news. The show is a must. Not some billionaire trying to sell you their book. Coming from a real place. Plenty ups and downs. Got some insights. Join the discussion now. We being honest and raw. Giving you real talk. We've been at the bottom and made it happen and much more. Let's go. The Second Time Founders podcast. More building. Let's talk.